it's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. I am excited and thrilled to bring Leah Jones on as a guest today. Leah is the Director of Financial Planning for Hightower Bethesda. And Leah and I connected through our dedication and work through Two Savvy Ladies, a nonprofit. She's a helpful volunteer. Leah has been providing investment guidance for over 20 years. She's a podcast host herself of Her Divorce Source, as well as the author of Kay Makes Money, a children's book, which we definitely have to be leaning into and talking about. Some highlights of Leah that you really have to know. She was named as Forbes' Best in-State Women Wealth Managers in 2022 and 23. She was also named a Women to Watch in 2022 by Investment News. She's been recognized as the top 40 under 40 financial professionals in Investment News as well in 2021. Most importantly, Leah is warm, kind, and incredibly brilliant in helping people around their finance. So Leah, thank you for joining me here today.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Ivy, for having me and for that really warm and welcoming introduction.
So let's go back before we go forward. Give me, how did you end up in the financial space? Is this something that was always important to you? Is it something you were brought up with, or one of those haphazard situations?
Yeah, so we were just speaking about my 3-year-old's, my 3-year-old daughter's birthday that's coming up, and that she's very much in this princess phase where everything is princess. And when I look back at my childhood, I guess that was never something that I was interested in. Believe it or not, I was always very fascinated about money from a very young age. And I think it really came from my family, because my father, I remember distinctly saying to me, Leah, I would be a lot further along in life had I known more about money, but my parents didn't know anything about money and I never figured it out. And here I am, in the situation that I am today. I feel like I could be a lot further ahead had I known more about money. And so it just imprinted on my brain, what is this thing called money and how do I figure it out so that I am not saying this to my kids 30 years from now, believe it or not, was really what I was thinking. And so that really set the course for teaching myself, because at that time I was probably 8th grade going into high school. And so at that time, it's not like there were all these neat online resources where you could teach yourself. I really did it the old school way, where I just invested in a lot of investment books, read a lot of the early investment theory, and started my first investment brokerage account in 1999, which, by the way, was a terrible time to start learning about investing. Oh, one other thing, when I was able to then choose a major, so I went to University of Maryland and found out that there was a thing called finance, and that was learning about investing. It was just a no-brainer for me. So yeah, that's really how I got started, and I've never lost interest in it. Fortunately, it continues to be something that I'm extremely passionate about, and it's always changing. Things are changing. Taxes are changing, markets are changing, people are changing, products are changing. So it's something where if you are a person that likes to continuously learn, you'll never be bored by a career in investments.
So I did want to touch on, I'm going to kind of side note this here. Being a fellow Terp, I never stepped into the School of Finance.
Too bad. You should have.
I'm telling you, I probably should. I really probably should have. And to my father's dismay, I did not. And that's a story for another day. But I have to say, okay, so shout out to any fellow Terps University of Maryland listeners out there. Let us know what schools you hunkered down in and played in. So you you ended up truly focusing on a career with a financial focus. That's a lot of careers out there. You could have gone in a lot of directions. And I want to touch on, because you really have such strong loyalty to helping women leaders, especially in the financial area. You have a strong alliance with Savvy Ladies, where, we're both hunkered down in the mission of women truly understanding their financials. How did this become your thing? How did this area become your thing? And, being a woman leader in that, what are the challenges or not challenges there, or opportunities there?
Yeah. Wow, a lot of
that was a lot. That was like three questions in one. No big deal. I know I stack questions. Pick one.
All right, I'm going to try to answer all of them. Well, okay, to start with, you're right. Finance is extremely broad and extremely diverse. And one thing that I always try to impart on women is that it's not overly technical, because I do wonder sometimes why women don't gravitate. I mean, I think maybe 15, 20% of the major was women. And the only reason I can think of is that maybe it's very technical, or maybe it's very money oriented, or people kind of envision wolves of Wall Street. And those are the type of people that want to do those jobs. And women don't want to be in those type of careers, because women by nature are caregivers. But I actually do think of myself very much as a caregiver in the financial industry. And how I found my way in that was I started off in an analyst training program for JP Morgan, and it was phenomenal. I used to tell people I was getting paid to figure out what I like to do. And any of our younger listeners, or even if you're older, who cares? You know what? You spend so much time working that there is not enough money in this world to be doing something that doesn't make you happy, right? You spend more time.
And I'm going to stop you right there. You're right. We spend too long in this world doing anything that doesn't bring us happiness, joy, and fulfillment.
Totally. And so the thing is, are you going to find that in your first job? No, you're going to kind of muddle around. You're going to try some things, and then you're going to just make this list of what I liked about that experience and what I didn't like about that experience. And then you just say, okay, well, my next guess is that this is what I think I really might like doing. When I started my career, at some point, I thought I wanted to be an equity research analyst. And I thought I wanted to do foreign exchange trading. And when I look back at both of those things, I think to myself, what in the world was I thinking? Because I have no interest in sitting behind a desk and doing really, really analytical. I mean, when you're an equity research analyst, you're getting in the weeds, you're reading documents, you're like getting really detailed in spreadsheets. It's a lot more of an analytical role. I'd say it's probably 75 to 80% analytical, and then 20% is interpersonal. So I think that's a big thing that people need to understand about themselves and find a match. So at the time, I thought I wanted more analytical roles because that was a strength that I had. But what I realized, and this is really through trial and error, which is why I'm telling people this on this podcast, is through trial and error, whatever you think you might want, it could be completely off a base. So listen to what your body is telling you about what you actually like doing, and then find those things that fill your cup up. So for me, my cup is filled up more by the interpersonal interactions. Now they are also exhausting for me. So I like a hybrid role, and a financial advisor is really that. About 50% of the time I'm in front of people, I'm having conversations. And about another 50% of the time I'm doing analytical work behind the scenes. So for me, that's a really perfect complement, and everybody has to kind of find, their own way with that. And the last thing I'll say about that is I read this book, the name is going to escape me, but basically the concept is that we all think, okay, in terms of our career, it's a ladder, and you want to climb the ladder, you want to get to the top, right? Well, that's a really antiquated way of thinking, again, because we could spend 30, 40 years working. So, instead of just trying to climb to the top, it's more thinking of it as a jungle gym. So you get on it, you have fun, you go, to the left, to the right, you go down something, and then you go back up, right?
I happen to love that analogy. It happens to make so much sense, because I know my own career, has been, various parts of different jungle gyms. And I've had great experiences, but 20 some odd years in the printing industry, owning a company, when I was done with that area, the jungle gym, I was done with that area, but it didn't mean I was done.
That's exactly right. And I just remembered who it was. It was the book Lean In by Sheryl Sandberg. So that's a great book. And
it is a great book. It's going back years.
Yes. Yes, but good.
I'm so impressed that you remembered that.
Oh my gosh, of course. She at the time, Lean In was very inspiring for women. I mean, now there's a lot more resources. But at the time,
more resources, but it was one of the early stage. Wow. And I thought her transparency in that book and the transparency of in the interviews of even how she went to her husband when he was shocked. He goes, "What do you mean you're not negotiating?" She's like, "But it's a good offer." I remember having that same conversation with my daughter when she got an offer.
Right. Yeah. I've had that conversation with my husband too. Right. What do? We're like, oh, they picked me and they're giving me this. Yes, I'm so grateful. We don't even think in our mind to challenge it like at all, So, yeah. So, and then in terms of women, I would say that's just developed over time, right? As I've served women clients. So, working with women as they get elderly, working with single women, working with widowed women, working with divorced women. And so, over time, it's just obviously being a woman myself, I have a special place in my heart for those people. Even my mom, who controlled our family's finances, had limited knowledge of what she was actually doing. So I am also able to kind of work with a strong personality that needs guidance, but might not always receive it so well, which is, particularly challenging. But again, as a woman, I feel like I can be more sensitive and understanding to that. And so, yeah, that's why I'm really passionate about serving this community. And the other thing I'll say about women is I want to bring more women into this industry. So the Women to Watch Award was actually specifically for allyship. And growing up in this industry, I've been in it now 20 years, I never really got taken under any other woman's wing. And this isn't, a sob story, but it's just kind of what happened. And so I've always thought to myself, I think we sometimes do a disservice to ourselves by not doing that, by not bringing other women in, embracing them. And I specifically was very thoughtful about bringing a woman onto my team that didn't even have a financial background. But I really knew that she had a psychological background and she had the aptitude to just learn and do the right thing. And that's all we need in the financial industry.
And, and I think that's important, is seeing somebody's aptitude, because skills are learnable. Attitude is not learnable.
No.
and I'm not confusing aptitude and attitude. I threw in a new word there, and I own that. But attitude, potential, the way somebody communicates, their how they read people, their emotional intelligence, etc. That is something that when you see strength in any of these categories, these skill sets are 100% learnable. And that's fabulous, right? And I think it's important. It's not about being an ally to women because we deserve it. And it's not about, let's throw the men under the bus, because we need our allyship with the men, because they are our partners. And great growth, and truly, I think the greatest growth in diversity and inclusion is truly all of us stepping in and making a difference and coming together and inviting all types of people into all kinds of professions. And I love nothing more when I see great women leaders in finance.
Agreed.
What have been some of the surprises that have come your way as you've built this career over the 20 years?
Surprises. Geez. When are there not surprises? I would say it's getting used to constant surprises. Whether it's that like you feel like you got a handle of your clients, or whether you feel like you got a handle of the markets, or whether you feel like you got a handle of running the business internally. And there's just, always things that change. And I'd say, if you are interested in a career in finance or investing, you definitely have to be amenable to that. I would imagine most careers, that's the case, because things just change so constantly. And I think just learning to look at it from a perspective of, I just recently read this other book, The Gap and the Gain, and just looking at everything as they change and just saying like, okay, there's a way to look at this positively, and there's a way to look at this negatively. And, choosing to look at it positively as what can you do? Now, what can you do with this situation the way it is?
So I want to shift this a little bit. So you're a busy woman, you're a busy professional, you're a mom, et cetera, et cetera. How do you have time to write a book? Let alone, and again, I could stack all my questions here too, because I have so many questions of like, how do you have time to write a book? And why this book? Why this was so important to you to write a children's book?
Okay, so the first question I say comes down to discipline. So one thing I always tell people, particularly with girls, but I think it's girls or boys, I don't care, is that when you have kids, if you can get them really into something. So I was really into sports. I played basketball, soccer, and softball. I played very competitively. And it really always forced me to be disciplined. Like it wasn't an option, right? Because I also did have to get good grades. Both my parents required that, and the schools required that to play on the teams. And so it was like a non-negotiable thing. So you want to play sports, great. You got to get good grades, and you got to not get in trouble. So I feel like that just made it very clear and easy for me. And then that discipline always followed with me in my life. And so what happens is, your time just gets shorter and shorter, right? You add kids, you add a marriage, you add your full-time job, your job becomes successful, more time. And so it's really, and I'm sure you can speak to this too, it's just trying to sort out, okay, what is important, what's not important, the things that are not important, can I either not do them or can I delegate those to other people? And then it's really kind of structuring your time. And you know what, if you're really good at that, and you're very disciplined, you can find the time to do everything that you want, believe it or not.
I happen to agree with you. Back, growing up, I danced, as many days a week as I could figure out how to do. So in the early stages, it was 2. In the later stages, it was 6. And schoolwork still had to be done. I was involved in other organizations, et cetera. And you just learn how to truly be honed in and focused on what you have to do. I think you learn early on also what you don't have to do. And sometimes what we think we have to do, what we don't have to do. What is delegatable? Where is support here? Where's collaboration here?
I think also as a woman that works full time and does have children, you got to find some time for yourself, because nobody's going to give it to you. Everybody wants more of mommy, or wants more of you at work, or, everybody wants more of you all the time. And so finding time just for yourself. So for me, I get 2 massages a month. And again, you might say, how in the world do you find time to do that? Well, I book it into my calendar.
Priority.
Yeah, I book it into my calendar.
You put it on your priority list of, this is how if Leah gets this, Leah can do this.
Right, exactly. It's something that, fills my cup. And so then that way I'm not looking for, okay, now my child's throwing a temper tantrum. Well, I'm not expecting her to fill my cup. She's a 3-year-old, right? So, but I can be there for her. I do think it's constantly a struggle with work, because I think it is easy to kind of throw yourself into work. And maybe sometimes when your kids are being difficult, to kind of avoid them and, okay, I'm working really hard. But it is, I think, a challenge, to say, okay, I really want to give my all to all these things, but I know I can't. So where are the things that I can scale back? And then how do I still fill my cup? So for another example, I make sure now I do at least 30 minutes a day of exercise. And that might just be a walk. If it's a walk, great. If it's something more vigorous, great. But like, that's again, something that I know fills my cup. So it's just finding those balance. I have a good friend, and she recently just actually wrote everything down. She said, these are the categories, and I'm going to write down every single one of my goals. And then I'm going to systematize it and put it in my calendar to do these things. So, I mean, if that's what you need, do that. But if you feel out of balance, nobody's going to help you get back into balance. You have to decide what's important to you and what you need. And then you just have to make time for it. And the book, I will say, it was a passion project. I had wanted to write a book for 15 years. Okay. My early books were about young investors, kind of this millennial investor type of thing, because I was a young investor myself, and I started since I was 16. Right. And then I wanted to do it about women investing, and both of these things I didn't do. Subsequently, now there's a gazillion books about that. So I just thought, well, I don't know. Do I have anything that much greater to say on either of those topics than has already been, published? Probably not. And what happened is, it was a very personal to me. I just kind of came to this realization through years of reading to my son that it's like money grows off of trees in these books. Like literally, it's not addressed. Kids get things in books and they just, come from thin air. And so it just, for me, was like a lightning moment where it was like, you've always wanted to write a book. It's clear as day that there's a lack of early education on money concepts to this age range. So he was like 3 or 4.
I was just going to ask what the age range we're referring to.
Yeah, like 3 to, so Kai Makes Money is really good for kind of 3 to 7. Some older kids will read it to younger kids. I've heard really good feedback. I've had some adults ask me if it was appropriate for them and told me that it was helpful to them. I'm not advocating that at all, but it prompts a lot of really good conversations between adults and children. And it's about how he makes money to buy something that he wants, which is, again, a really simple concept. But then kids get kind of excited and say, oh yeah, I want to do this to buy that. And, that even just that simple thing, learning that early on makes a big difference, because then you keep imparting that over the years. And I know that my kids are going to have some sense of money. Now, if they choose to be good with it or not is going to be on them, right? But I'm going to at least give them the tools to be successful with it if they want. But I want other kids to have that too. And I know sometimes with financial literacy, it's just, if you don't think you know it, you don't feel comfortable then talking about it with your kids.
100%. I mean, I remember, as you're talking about Kai Makes Money, and I'm like, you know what? I remember as a kid, I wanted a television in my room. Okay. And I was babysitting already. So I was not the 3 to 7. I was probably, let's call me, 12, 13, 14, 15. Right. But I wanted a television in my room. And my father's like, okay, let's go out shopping for a television. And I'm like, cool. And we went shopping for the television. We saw the television cost, and it was very, very, very small. And we saw it would cost, whatever it was, $100 in round numbers, just keeping math simple right now. And he goes, okay, when you can earn $50, we could come and buy the $100 televition.
Nice. He was financing some of it for you. There you go. He was matching you.
It was a matching campaign. It's like, okay, if we, for the nonprofit, when we raise $100, we get matched 100. I was like, oh. And he's like, okay, so how do you want to make the $50? And it was, a money discussion. Like, what can you do to make $50? How much do you make babysitting? What else can you, and it was it's so important to have our young generation understand the concept of value. And so I so love that you did this book, Kai Makes Money for Children. And the other thing I thought of as you were talking was this, when my kids were young in elementary school, they used to have a program that matched a 5th grade class to the 1st grade class as reading buddies, right? It gives your 4th or 5th graders opportunity to feel, as a mentor. And it gives our younger children, and they would, so if your fourth and fifth graders, let's say, would read to your kindergartners or first, it was a program. And your young kids got this opportunity to be read to, but then also learn to read a book to their big buddy.
I love
and
that.
It's incredibly empowering. It's truly that win-win, if not win-win-win situation.
Yeah, I love that. I haven't heard of, my son's in kindergarten right now. I haven't heard of that yet, but I love that. That's so great. And the other thing that I think is great too is having women have these conversations, mothers have these conversations with their kids so that the kids know, hey, mommy knows just as much about money as anybody else. And she's the one that taught me too. I think is very empowering, and it sets a model framework. And the other thing I will say, because I have a son and a daughter, is that I think, don't treat them any differently when it comes to these type of conversations. Because something has happened over the years. I can't pinpoint it. But like something has happened where we just we mold and shape women sometimes. I think it's getting better. I think the younger generation is getting much better about it, but to kind of say like, oh, you don't really need to know about money. Like, somebody will help you, or you'll figure it out, or your husband will deal with it, or, and it's just, that's not the case anymore. I mean, look at all the statistics, like women are becoming more the primary breadwinner. And so, you need to take as much ownership over it as anybody else.
I love that. Leah, how can our listeners learn more about you and connect with you?
Sure. So if you go to hightowerbethesda.com, you can go to our team and then click on my profile, Leah Jones. That's got, everything about me. And I would be happy to connect with you if something I said today resonated.
And listeners, Leah is a woman to watch. As the introduction said just the tip of the iceberg. So you want to truly watch Leah, be in touch with Leah and connect, because as we all come together and can learn from one another, that's how we all grow and expand. There is no limit any longer on what is possible. It's all what you truly desire for yourself. We can make it happen in every way. With that, I love, Leah, when you were talking about the idea of, prioritization and making things happen and, putting ourselves first. As women leaders, we must take care of ourselves. And if it's your 2 massages, which is mine is usually 1 a month, but I do some other things for myself, know what fills your cup, listeners, and make sure you're doing it, because everybody will win from there. So Leah, thank you for joining me here today.
Thanks so much for having me, and thanks for listening.
Viewers and listeners, actually listeners today, do yourself a favor. Take a moment and say, what is my aha from listening today? What did I take forward? What was the most meaningful moment for me? What action are you going to build around that? Feel free to put it in the show notes. Feel free to put it in the chat. Feel free to reach out to Leah or myself with it. Most importantly, in honor of yourself, if you're giving yourself the space to listen to these podcasts that are out there, and there are many, many great ones, always identify what's working for you, what your takeaway is, and then what your action item are. Thanks for joining us here at Her Success Story. See you next time.
Don't need your approval anymore, 'cause I've got mine.